I can never forget that moment. My cruel mother-in-law was burning with rage, her eyes wild, her breath sharp. Before I could react, she suddenly grabbed a heavy ceramic flower pot from the edge of the garden and, with full force, smashed it over my head. A sharp explosion of pain shot through my skull as the world spun around me. I staggered, then collapsed to the ground, my vision blurring, my hands instinctively reaching for my throbbing head. Without a word, she turned and ran. But what happened next was far more shocking than I ever could have imagined. My name is Emily Carter, and for years, I believed I had the perfect life. Or at least, I convinced myself I did. I was 32 when everything changed, but looking back, I realized the cracks had been forming for a long time. If you had asked me back then, I would have told you I was happy. I had a stable marriage, a roof over my head, and a husband who, at least on the surface, seemed reliable. But the truth is, I was living in a cage, a beautiful, well-kept cage where my feelings and choices didn't matter. I met Daniel Hughes when I was 26 at a charity event in Portland, Oregon. He wasn't particularly charming or romantic, but he had a steady and responsible nature that made me feel safe. At the time, I had been working long hours at a marketing firm, struggling to balance life on my own. Daniel seemed like a stable presence in the chaos, someone dependable. Or so I thought. We dated for 2 years before he proposed. I didn't hesitate to say yes. I was swept up in the idea of building a future together, buying a home, starting a family, creating a life. I was convinced I had found my safe harbor. But the first cracks appeared almost immediately after the wedding. After our wedding, we moved into Daniel's parents' home. His mother, Margaret Hughes, had insisted that it would help us save money for our own place. She presented it as a temporary arrangement, something practical. What she didn't say was that it also meant she would have complete control over my life. Margaret was a retired nurse in her mid-60s, and she had a way of disguising control as kindness. She never gave direct orders. She made suggestions that felt impossible to refuse. Emily, don't you think it's better if you handle the cooking? Daniel works so hard. You should be grateful Daniel chose you. He could have married anyone. Her words stung, always delivered with a smile, but designed to make me feel small. Daniel's father, Robert Hughes, was quieter but no better. A retired contractor, he spent most of his time watching TV or tinkering in the garage. He never openly insulted me, but he didn't have to. His silence spoke for him. He would nod along with Margaret's outdated comments about a woman's place being in the home, making it clear that he agreed with her.
And Daniel?
The man who was supposed to stand by me? He did nothing. Whenever I tried to talk to him about how his parents made me feel, he dismissed my concerns with a wave of his hand. They're just old-fashioned, Emily. Don't take it personally. I tried to tell myself that things would get better, that this was just a phase, but deep down I knew I was trapped. I had given up my job to focus on our new life, believing it was what a good wife should do. But each passing day, I lost a little more of myself. Margaret dictated everything. How I should clean, what I should cook, how I should dress when we had guests over. Robert supported her silently, and Daniel just went along with it all. I felt like a stranger in my own marriage, like I was constantly walking on eggshells, trying to meet expectations that weren't even mine. The dreams Daniel and I had talked about, buying our own house, having kids, building a life together, began to fade. Whenever Margaret and Robert mentioned grandchildren, Daniel would just shrug and change the subject, leaving me to fend off their remarks alone. I felt abandoned in my own marriage. Then came the day when everything shattered. It was a crisp morning in late spring, and I was outside, unloading groceries from the trunk, carefully placing the bags on the ground before carrying them inside. The morning was quiet, except for the rustling of leaves and the distant hum of a neighbor's lawnmower. I didn't hear Margaret step outside. She had been watching me, waiting. I bent down to pick up a bag when, out of nowhere, a crushing pain exploded at the back of my head. My vision blurred instantly, and a wave of dizziness swept over me. I gasped, stumbling forward, my hands instinctively reaching out to stop my fall. Confusion clouded my mind as I collapsed onto the driveway, my groceries scattering around me. For a few agonizing seconds, I couldn't process what had happened. Then, as my senses slowly adjusted, I saw the shattered remains of a ceramic flower pot, its broken pieces mixed with the soil that had once held a thriving plant. Margaret had hit me. The weight of the blow throbbed in my skull, warm blood trickling down the back of my neck. My breath came in sharp gasps as I looked up at her, my head spinning. She stood there, her face pale, her hands shaking, her eyes wide with shock. Not concern, not guilt. Shock. As if she hadn't expected me to still be conscious. For a moment, Margaret did nothing, just stared at me, frozen. Then, suddenly realizing the weight of her actions, she took a step back. I didn't mean to, she stammered, her voice unsteady. But she didn't try to help me. She didn't even check if I was okay. Instead, she turned and rushed back into the house, leaving me there. I lay on the cold pavement, the world spinning, my vision flickering between sharp pain and hazy darkness. I tried to move, but my body refused to cooperate. My arms trembled beneath me as I attempted to push myself up, but my strength was failing. Somewhere in the distance, I heard a door slam shut. Margaret was gone. She had hit me and left me there like I was nothing. A faint ringing filled my ears. My breaths were shallow. My fingers dug into the concrete driveway as I tried to anchor myself to reality, to the present. Then, finally, voices. Someone was calling out. Footsteps hurried toward me. I wasn't alone. I woke up in the hospital, my head throbbing with pain, my body aching all over. Bright lights flickered above me, and the steady beeping of machines filled the room. My throat felt dry, and for a moment, I struggled to remember how I got here. Then it all came back. The groceries, the impact of the flower pot smashing against my skull, the pain, and Margaret's face as she stood over me, shocked but not remorseful. I should have felt angry, but all I felt was numb. A nurse entered the room, offering me a gentle smile as she checked my four. You're lucky, she said softly. You had a nasty head injury, but there's no major skull fracture. Just a deep wound and a concussion. Lucky. I didn't feel lucky. Before I could process anything, the door creaked open again. Daniel. His expression was unreadable, his hands shoved into his pockets as he stepped inside. For a brief moment, a tiny part of me hoped he was here because he was furious. Furious at his mother. Furious that someone had hurt me. But the look on his face wasn't one of anger. It was fear. Not fear for me. Fear of what I might say. He sat down beside my bed, rubbing his palms together, his face pale. Then, after a long pause, he leaned in and spoke in a low, urgent voice. Emily, listen. Mom, she panicked, okay? She didn't mean to hurt you. It was an accident. An accident. My breath caught in my throat. I turned my head slowly to face him, wincing at the pain. An accident? My voice was barely a whisper. Daniel exhaled sharply, shaking his head. She's scared, Emily. She didn't know what she was doing. Please don't tell the police she hit you. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out an envelope. He placed it gently on my bedside table. $50,000. To help with hospital bills, whatever you need. It took a second for my brain to register what was happening. Daniel, my husband, wasn't here to stand by me. He was here to buy my silence. I stared at the envelope, then at him. I searched his face for some sign of guilt, of regret. But all I saw was desperation. Don't make this a big deal. He actually said that. Something inside me cracked. All the years of swallowing my pain, forcing myself to smile, pretending everything was fine, they all came rushing back, suffocating me. This wasn't just about today. This was about all the times Margaret had belittled me, controlled me, made me feel small. This was about all the times Daniel had dismissed me, ignored my pain, left me to fight alone. I wasn't just hurt. I was done. I looked him straight in the eye and said, "No." Daniel blinked. "Emily, please." "No." My voice was stronger now. "Your mother attacked me. She left me lying on the ground, bleeding. And instead of defending me, you want to cover it up? You want me to pretend it never happened. I could see him panicking now. Emily, think about what you're doing. No, Daniel. Think about what you are doing. He opened his mouth to argue, but I didn't let him. You're not here because you care about me. You're here because you want to protect your mother. You want me to stay silent, just like I have for years. His jaw clenched. He had no response. I turned my head away from him. Get out. Daniel hesitated for a second longer, then exhaled sharply, grabbed the envelope, and walked out of the room without another word. As soon as the door closed behind him, I let out a shaky breath. My hands trembled, but for the first time in years, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Determination. I wasn't going to stay silent. The room felt eerily quiet after Daniel left. His words still echoed in my mind. Don't make this a big deal. But this was a big deal. His mother had attacked me, and instead of standing by me, he had tried to bribe me into silence. I clenched my fists, my heart pounding. I wouldn't let them get away with this. A knock at the door pulled me from my thoughts. A doctor walked in, checking my chart before offering me a kind smile. Emily Carter, right? I'm Dr. Michael Lawson. How are you feeling? I hesitated. The truth? I felt broken, betrayed, angry. But all I said was, I've been better. Dr. Lawson pulled up a chair, watching me carefully. You look like you have a lot on your mind. Do you want to talk about it? I don't know why, but something about his voice, calm, genuine, kind, made me open up. I told him everything. How Margaret hit me. How Daniel tried to cover it up. How I felt trapped in a life that wasn't mine. By the time I finished, tears were streaming down my face. I had spent so many years bottling everything up, pretending it wasn't that bad. But now, sitting here, speaking my truth, I finally saw it for what it was. Abuse. Dr. Lawson didn't interrupt. He just listened. Then, when I had nothing left to say, he spoke. Emily, what happened to you isn't just wrong. It's a crime. His words hit me like a bolt of lightning. A crime. Not a misunderstanding. Not a mistake. A crime. You have every right to stand up for yourself, he continued. You don't have to face this alone. The police will be here soon to take your statement. You should tell them the truth. I swallowed hard. Could I really do this? Could I really go against Daniel, against Margaret, against the family I had spent years trying to belong to? Then I thought about Margaret's face when she hit me. I thought about Daniel's betrayal, his attempt to buy me off. And I knew the answer. Yes, I could. The decision settled in my chest like a weight, but not a heavy, suffocating weight like before. This was different. This was clarity. This was control. I wouldn't stay silent. Not this time. A short while later, a uniformed police officer walked into my hospital room, holding a small notepad. He introduced himself as Detective James Rowe, his expression neutral but attentive. Miss Carter, I understand you were injured. Can you tell me exactly what happened? I sat up as best I could, ignoring the dull ache in my skull. My fingers gripped the bedsheet. This was it. This was my moment to fight back. It wasn't an accident, I said firmly. Margaret Hughes attacked me. She picked up a ceramic flower pot and hit me on the head with it while I was unloading groceries in the driveway. Detective Rowe's pen moved swiftly across the page. She struck you intentionally? Yes. My voice didn't waver. And after she hit me, she left me there, injured on the ground. He nodded. Did anyone else witness this? Hope flickered inside me. Rachel. My neighbor, Rachel Bennett, might have security cameras facing our driveway. The detective made a note. I'll look into that. Now, about your husband. Has he been supportive? I let out a bitter laugh. Daniel tried to bribe me into staying quiet. He offered me $50,000 to say I just fell. Detective Rowe's expression hardened. That's obstruction of justice. I swallowed. Even though I already knew Daniel had betrayed me, hearing it put so plainly felt like a fresh stab in the heart. But I didn't let the pain consume me. Not this time. I was done protecting people who didn't care about me. Not long after I gave my statement, My neighbor Rachel Bennett visited me in the hospital. She had always been kind, though we weren't particularly close before this. But now, she was furious on my behalf. Emily, I heard what happened. I was so worried when I saw the ambulance. She hesitated, then said something that made my heart race. My security cameras faced the driveway. I might have caught everything on video. Video. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. Could this be the proof I needed? Rachel wasted no time. She and her husband reviewed the footage, and what they found confirmed everything. It showed Margaret stepping onto the porch, watching me as I unloaded the groceries. Then, as I bent down to pick up a bag, she suddenly grabbed a large ceramic flower pot from a decorative stand near the door. She lifted it with both hands and smashed it down onto my head. I saw myself collapse onto the driveway, dazed and in pain. And then, Margaret didn't help me. She panicked, stepped back, and ran into the house, leaving me lying there. I felt sick watching it, but I also felt something else, relief. There was no denying it now. Rachel handed the footage over to Detective Rowe, who assured me that it would be crucial in building the case against Margaret. But I knew the fight wasn't over yet, because Daniel was still trying to protect her. A few days later, Daniel came back to the hospital. But this time, something in his demeanor had changed. He wasn't calm or confident anymore. He looked desperate. He paced the room, running a hand through his hair before finally speaking. Emily, you have to think about what you're doing. I stared at him, my body still sore, my head still aching. What I'm doing? You mean telling the truth? His jaw clenched. If this goes to court, it'll ruin my mom's life. Do you really want to destroy our family over this? I felt my stomach turn. Even now, even after watching me bleed, he still only cared about protecting Margaret. I let out a bitter laugh. Destroy our family? I repeated. Daniel, your mother destroyed it the moment she smashed a flower pot over my head. And you? You destroyed it when you tried to buy my silence. He flinched. But I wasn't done. I almost died, Daniel. And instead of standing by me, you stood by her. You expect me to stay quiet, to pretend it didn't happen, just to protect a woman who left me to bleed on the ground. He didn't respond. He just stared at me, his face tight with frustration. I shook my head, my voice steady. Our marriage is over, Daniel. There's no coming back from this. Something in his expression shifted. For the first time, I saw regret. But regret wasn't enough. It never had been. I turned away from him. Get out. And this time, when he left, I knew he wasn't coming back. The hospital felt quieter after Daniel left. But for the first time in a long time, I wasn't afraid of the silence. I had spent years diminishing myself, making excuses, pretending everything was fine. But now, the truth was out. And I wasn't going to hide from it anymore. Dr. Michael Lawson checked on me regularly. He wasn't just my doctor. He had become a source of support in a way I hadn't expected. One day, after a particularly emotional police meeting, he sat down beside me. You're handling this with more strength than most people ever could. His voice was calm, reassuring. Don't let them take away your sense of who you are. You're stronger than you think. His words hit me deeply, because for so long I had felt weak, trapped, voiceless. But not anymore. Detective Rowe kept me updated on the investigation. The security footage from Rachel's cameras had sealed Margaret's fate. It showed everything. Margaret picking up the heavy flower pot. Margaret raising it high above her head. Margaret slamming it down onto me. Me collapsing onto the pavement. And worst of all, Margaret running away instead of helping me. There was no way to explain it away. A week later, Margaret, Daniel, and Robert were all brought in for questioning. Margaret tried to play the victim during questioning. When the police confronted her with the security footage, she clutched her chest, gasping dramatically. I didn't mean to hurt her, she cried. It was just a moment of frustration. I panicked afterward. That's why I ran inside. But the footage didn't lie. Her cold, calculated movements. Her decision to leave me bleeding on the ground. It was all there, undeniable. Robert, as always, sat silently beside her. He never spoke up for me when I lived in their house. And he didn't speak up for me now. But his silence had consequences. Since he had helped cover for Margaret, refusing to report what happened, the police charged him with obstruction of justice. Then there was Daniel. He sat across from the police, his shoulders tense, his fingers tapping nervously on the table. I wasn't trying to cover anything up, he insisted. I just wanted to keep the family together. The detective raised an eyebrow. So, offering your wife $50,000 to stay silent wasn't covering it up? Daniel's face paled. He tried to defend himself, but there was nothing left to defend. In the end, Daniel was charged as an accessory for attempting to obstruct justice and cover up his mother's crime. When the news broke, the entire town was in shock. Margaret, once a well-respected woman in the community, was now infamous. Daniel, the so-called dependable husband, was exposed as a coward. And for the first time in years, I felt free. With Margaret arrested, Robert under investigation, and Daniel facing charges, I finally felt like I had escaped the prison I had been living in for years. But my battle wasn't over yet. I still had to rebuild my life from the ground up. The first thing I did, I filed for divorce. I wasn't going to waste another second tied to a man who had chosen his mother over me, over my safety, my dignity, my life. Daniel didn't fight it. What could he say? He had already proven exactly what I meant to him. The divorce was messy, but I didn't care. I wasn't fighting for money or property. I was fighting for my freedom. And when the papers were finally signed, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Relief. Rachel and her husband became my biggest supporters. They opened their home to me while I recovered, offering me a place to feel safe for the first time in years. And then there was Dr. Michael Lawson. What started as kindness and support turned into friendship. And, eventually, something more. Michael didn't rush me or try to fix me. He simply stood by me, reminding me every day that I was strong enough to stand on my own. And 1 year after the trial, he asked me to marry him. This time, I said yes, not because I needed safety, but because I had finally found love. The trial was brutal. I had to sit in the courtroom, face to face with Margaret, Daniel, and Robert, and tell the world what they had done to me. Margaret tried to play the victim, claiming she wasn't thinking clearly when she hit me with the flower pot. But the security footage destroyed her lies. The jury saw everything. Margaret lifting the heavy ceramic pot. Margaret slamming it down onto my head. Margaret running away instead of helping me. There was no excuse. The verdict came quickly. Margaret was found guilty of assault with intent to cause great bodily harm and fleeing the scene of an injury. She was sentenced to several years in prison. Daniel was convicted as an accessory for obstruction of justice and received a 3-year prison sentence. Robert was charged with obstruction but was granted house arrest due to his age. And just like that, they were gone from my life. After the trial, I finally moved into a home of my own. It wasn't big, but it was mine. For the first time in years, I woke up without fear, without control, without anyone telling me how to live. And I realized something. I had survived. Not just the attack. Not just the betrayal. But everything. I had survived years of manipulation, gaslighting, and control. And I had come out stronger. Michael had been by my side through it all. What started as a doctor-patient connection turned into a friendship. What turned into a friendship became something more. 1 year after the trial, he proposed. And this time, I wasn't saying yes to escape a bad situation. I was saying yes because I had found real love. We married in a small, intimate ceremony, surrounded by people who truly cared about me. Rachel and her husband. New friends. A new family. It wasn't flashy or grand, but it was perfect. Because for the first time in my life, I wasn't settling. I had built a new life on my own terms. And as I stood there, looking at the people who had stood by me, I realized something. Margaret, Daniel, and Robert had tried to break me. But in the end, they had only made me stronger. Now, as I sit here telling my story, I feel like a completely different person. The Emily Carter who walked into Daniel's life years ago is gone. In her place is someone stronger. Someone who knows her worth. Someone who refuses to settle for anything less than she deserves. I still think about them sometimes. Not with anger, but with closure. They made their choices. And now they're living with the consequences. And me? I'm living my life.
Free, loved, happy.
Because I've learned something that will stay with me forever. Betrayal doesn't define you. What defines you is how you rise after you've been knocked down. This is my new beginning. And I couldn't be more grateful for it. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Stay tuned for more updates, and I'll see you in the next one.